The surly curmudgeon, watching out for the young'uns.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Sea Lions Foundation, another one of our informative sessions. A lot of people have a lot of questions, and we have a lot of answers. There's a lot going on here. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking time out of your lives to ask the questions and to listen to the answers. Right? There's several things I'm going to go over tonight. We're going to do this in brief sessions, and in each one will be a separate video that we'll put up on the website. Okay? What I want to address right now is why it feels like the end of the world, but it really isn't. Because it's not. Okay? Apocalypse fever is gripping much of the world. The Protestants are waiting for the rapture. The Catholics are waiting for, the papal tombs under the Vatican to all get used up, and then no more popes means no more church, means the end of the world, right? The Muslims are waiting for the Mahdi to come up out of that well he went into all those years ago. Almost everybody is expecting the end of the world. Okay? And when I say apocalypse fever, I mean the attitude that planning is pretty pointless. There's no long term, so make short-term decisions without worrying about the long term, because it won't happen anyway. It's not just believing that the end is near. Apocalypse fever involves hoping that the end is near, so I don't have to worry about this long-term stuff. Okay? I don't have to deal with it. Okay? Now, the perception that something bad of epic proportions is impending is accurate, but not the end of the world. I can tell you what's going on, I can tell you how bad it is, and after a bit of explanation, I'll give you some hope. Okay? There's a great deal of emotional energy being poured into the end of the world. Here's what I mean. Used to be, people thought very long term, thinking about what their grandkids and great-grandkids might be, how they would live, and what they themselves might do to move the family in good directions so that those grandkids and great-grandkids could have, a future of whatever quality. The idea was that a family was more than dad, mom, and kids. A family to them started way back in the mists of history and should go on until the end of time. If a family failed to go on, it was a failure as a family. Right? That definition still applies. Look around you. You see families failing all the time. The most basic evolutionary thing, and this is incredible. The idea of evolution, that we're just animals, has been used to destroy families. And yet families are what ensures your evolutionary success, that you live to reproduce offspring and they live to reproduce offspring. Kids that are raised in failing families don't have kids. Or if they manage to have a kid or two, those kids don't have kids. Family lines that are dysfunctional die out pretty quick without having more kids. I was about to say without issue, but nobody knows what that means anymore. Today, people are getting the feeling that all is lost. Things are about to end. The feeling that things are about to end is accurate. Great and valuable things are about to end, and billions of lives will be lost. Civilization will not survive the 21st century. It won't. Right? However, the feeling that all is lost is not an accurate sense of impending doom. It's the feeling that results from a decision to give up. That's where the feeling comes from. You decide to give up. Many people can see that things are about to end, but they don't feel that all is lost because they haven't given up. So it's easy to give up. Don't feel bad if you've given up. Just pick yourself up and get moving, so to speak. And we'll help. All is not lost. There is no reason to give up. Okay? There's just a reason to change direction. That's what we're here for. Here's why so many people are getting the feeling that things are coming to an end. Our subconscious, deep in our little hindbrains, is very good at threat assessment, and it forgets nothing. Every news article you hear that contains facts that point to a threat is factored in. Every conversation, everything you see, hear, or read That is all taken in by your subconscious and measured for threat assessment. Matter of fact, the main reason that people get neurotic or screwy is because something has happened to damage their subconscious and make it hypersensitive to certain kinds of threats, so they act weird. Right? Here's what your subconscious has realized. Given the structure of our civilization, the obvious mental illness of our political, social, and religious leaders, and the evidence showing that refusal to clean up the mess has poisoned the world past the point of no return, two things are quite clear. One, we've passed the carrying capacity of the planet. There are more people than this planet can support. And no matter how it comes about, our population is going to drop drastically to somewhere below the planet's carrying capacity. That's going to happen. We don't need World War III or, germ cooked up in a lab. It's already happening. Two, we've damaged the world. We've reduced the world's carrying capacity to the point that it's well below a given people, given all these factors I just mentioned. Now, some may argue, well, the planet could carry 1 billion people. You know what? If society were sane, it could carry 10 or 20 billion. Society isn't sane. I was on a research project more years ago than I care to think about, calculating what is the carrying capacity of this planet. How many people could it feed? And we just found out how many arable acres there were. We didn't use semi-arable land or desert, which we could water all of that and grow crops on it, right? We just used the arable land. We didn't even count in farming the oceans, okay? And calculated this world could feed 24 billion people without farming the oceans and without watering the deserts. Right? It can't do that anymore. The ecosphere on which our lives depend has been too badly damaged. It can't, it's not going to carry what it used to, right? Any of you could name several things this society does that a sane society wouldn't do. You could also name things that this society doesn't do that a sane society would do. It's an insane society. I'm not going to try to prove that point, because each of you have your own list of things where this society is just nuts. Right? So there's no point in even discussing it. We all know it's true. There are several reasons why society is doomed, and there's not a dang thing anyone can do about it. And by society, I mean anywhere on the planet where water or electricity is provided by a utility, or where any government is complex enough to need paper. That's what I mean by civilization. Okay? I'm talking about hitting the global reset button. The only question is whether it will happen suddenly, which is possible. World War III, right? They're working hard on doing something like that over Ukraine right now. Stupidest argument in the world, right? Or it could be a slow grinding process that leaves everyone who survives it wondering, what went wrong? At any step in the way, they could have solved this. And the answer is, yeah, if civilization were sane, we could have done that. Yeah. The end of civilization is what everyone is sensing. That's the doomsday that's lingering on the edges of our consciousness. Not the end of humanity or the end of the world. The end of civilization, this civilization, and the destruction of more than 90% of the lives on this planet by the end of this century. Remember the history on this planet, all right? Mankind is only so smart, right? Typically, a civilization gets between about 1,500 and 3,000 years. Once it's risen to the point where it's recognizable, which for us would be ancient Assyria about 3,000 years ago, okay? Then it gets about 3,000 years, and then civilization collapses. Everybody goes back to subsistence agriculture, and the next civilization grows out of that, right? We're right up on that 3,000 year mark, folks. We might stretch it out to 32, 3,500. Yeah, not much further than that. Okay, I'm counting our civilization as beginning with the Great Bronze Age collapse between like 1200 and 1000 BC, when all those huge empires just imploded. Okay? That's when our civilization began, after that. Okay? The collapse of civilization is inevitable. It is already happening. And your main concern, if you're sane, is to get your family line through it and out the other side sanely and reasonably healthy. Now, if you say, well, civilization is collapsing, so I'm going to eat, drink, and be merry, good, go do that. Why are you here? We don't have eat, drink, and be merry to offer. Eh? We do eat, drink, and be merry, but not to the point that we're using it to just forget about the fact that the world is ending. Okay? This will not be easy. Fortunately, if you listen to me, you'll find that it is rather simple. But remember, easy and simple rarely go together. Right? I'm going to give you the top 10 reasons why this civilization is doomed. I'm not going into any detail. If you want detail, just gargle the ones on which you want more info. Question? Gargle? Google. Yeah, I will never treat them with respect. They're evil people doing evil things, and their corporate motto is "Don't be evil," to disguise the fact that they're evil people doing evil things. No, I will never. No. I'll always say gargle or something even nastier. No, when I say gargle it, I mean Google it. Okay. Tim, can we do this like a Letterman top 10 list? Legally, you think we'll get in trouble? Give it a shot. Oh yeah, we can use the parody clause on copyright. Okay, you can add the titles. All right, good. All right, top 10 reasons why civilization is doomed by the end of the century. Number 10, rule by psychopath. Our civilization has created this unique structure. Used to be, if you were going to be in charge of anything, basically you inherited it, or you went out and conquered it with weapons. Those are the only two ways to get in charge of anything. Now we've created these governments and corporations where the guy in charge can be replaced by someone else who maneuvered to become the new guy in charge. Right? And when you get in charge of one of these corporations, these pyramid-shaped organizations, like a corporation or a government, where there's just a few people at the top and lots of people at the bottom, right? That's what I mean by pyramid-shaped. When you get control of one of these, you can use the power you've just gained to hide all the crimes you committed to get there. So these pyramid power structures we've created in this civilization, and they're unique to us, right? In which the leader can be replaced. The pyramid power structure isn't unique. What's unique is that the leaders can be ousted and replaced, right? And there's even mechanisms for that, okay? That's created psychopath magnets, where every psycho in the world wants to be in charge of a corporation or a government, and all he's got to do is commit enough crimes to get there and get away with them, right? Just by building civilization that way, and that's only in the last 250 years that we've started doing that, okay? It's doomed. Psychopaths do not nurture the people under them and help them grow. Believe it or not, many of the monarchs throughout history, not all of them, not even half of them, but many, have seen it as their business to nurture their nation so that the people grew and were healthier and better off than when the guy took the throne for the first time. To find one of these psychopaths that's in charge of one of our governments or corporations who thinks that way? No. Nope. Buddy, I love you, but I'm doing a lecture right now. This is my buddy. He likes to hang out on my speaker cabinet, and sometimes he reaches out and says hello. Number 9 reason why civilization is doomed by the end of the century. Dioxin in every breast. Every woman who submits a sample of her breast milk for testing, we find dioxin in it. There are very few chemicals more poisonous than dioxin. And some people say, well, exactly what problems does dioxin cause? And why aren't we seeing more of those problems? The answer is, we're seeing society get sicker and sicker and sicker, and the diseases that we have are less and less and less curable. We've reached the point where 1 in 2 Americans will get cancer in their lifetime, 1 in 3 will die from it. right? When I was a kid, when somebody had a dog and it got old, it died of old age. Now, 1 out of 2 dogs dies of cancer. The world is getting sicker because of the poisons we're putting into it. Dioxin, I'm offering that to you as simply an example of the one place where all of our biological filters exist to protect has been penetrated by the most subtly evil and powerfully dangerous chemicals. Okay? Civilization is doomed. If you can't nurse your babies with healthy milk, they don't grow up to have more babies of their own. They grow up weak and sickly if they survive at all. Right? And that means every generation gets smaller and smaller and smaller until by the end of the century, civilization is no more, just like I predicted. And I'm not alone in that prediction. The entire Sea Lions board stands behind me in this. We've worked on this. We've spent time on this. 80 years max. And that's even if we don't have World War III. Right? Huh. Number 8, mercury in every baby. Mercury is amazingly poisonous, folks. In the list of poisonous stuff, okay, there's mercury, there's barium, and then there's the radioactive stuff. That's how high it is on the list. Okay, it's right under the radioactive stuff and barium. Okay? It's a murder weapon, folks. Our civilization in various industrial processes puts about 8,000 tons of mercury vapor into the air every year. This mercury vapor does not fall into the water or the land and just fall down and get reabsorbed. It goes uphill. Right? It gets into the plants and the bacteria and then works its way up to where the animals eat it, and eventually the apex predator eats it, which is us. So now we've reached a point where every newborn baby has detectable levels of mercury in its body. Okay? Detectable levels of mercury means that baby will have fewer children, or is less likely to have children, will have fewer children. If they do have children, those children will be sicklier, and those children will have fewer children. So again, we have smaller and smaller generations until no civilization. Right. Number 6. Wow, my numbering is off here. Okay. Number 6. Played out farmland worldwide. There have to be minerals in the farmland, and the way that nature used to provide for this is the rivers would flood every year, and they'd bring down silt from the mountains, and they would spread that silt all over the fields so that the fields were made rich. And you come in and you get the flooding in the fall and winter, and then you come out and you plant in those fields in spring, and the seeds go, wow, look at all these minerals I have to eat from this stuff that was left over when the river flooded. Yay! And it grows the most amazingly healthy and powerful fruits and vegetables, which then some of those go to the animals, and the animals are big and strong and healthy, and then we eat the fruits and vegetables and the animals, and we're big and healthy. Right? We can prove this. We saw this happen in the medieval warm period. It created the Viking era. You know, I don't have time on this one. I'll do a separate video on how minerals created the Viking era. Yeah, I'll do that one. Okay. But we've dammed up all our rivers. They no longer flood. See, this hunger to control weather, to control nature, ended up slitting our own throats, because then we go farm in the field, and the plants suck all the minerals out of the field, right? And after, 10, 20, 30, 50 years, there's no minerals left for the plants to bring you. The plant will still grow. It just has almost no nutritional content. And so then we have people living their lives malnourished. Okay? And I'm talking subclinical malnutrition, where you're just feeling really poor. But it's not so bad that you actually have rickets or scurvy, just to name 2 classic malnutrition diseases, right? And of course, when you feel poorly, you're not as energetic, you don't choose quite as well in marriage, you don't get as involved in life, you don't have as many kids, they don't grow up as strong. Have we heard this song before? Yes, that's right. And eventually, end of civilization. Because there just weren't enough people to maintain it. Number 7, Fukushima. Ladies and gentlemen, Fukushima, there are 3 reactors there, excuse me. There are 3 reactors there that have melted down. The radioactive pile of uranium and plutonium, whatever is in there, have burned through the concrete containment vessel and down into the ground and into the bedrock. Now, the water flowing down off the mountains through the bedrock, through the water table, is washing over these radioactive cores and out into the Pacific Ocean. The Pacific Ocean is almost completely dead. Right? Gargle Fukushima, dead Pacific Ocean, right? And learn a little bit. Fukushima is an extinction level event. That doesn't mean it will kill all of us, but it means it could. You know, with the right weather patterns, the right twists of fate, yeah. Fukushima is big enough to kill all of humanity. Okay? And Fukushima is one of the key reasons why at least the northern hemisphere of this planet, guarantee you, as sure as God made little green apples, the northern hemisphere of this planet, once humanity dies off of it in the next 80 years or so, will lie fallow for several hundred years. When I say lie fallow, I mean nobody will plow it, because there won't be anybody living there to plow it. If there is anybody living there, they're going to be at such a low level of technology, they're practically a hunter-gatherer, or they're a shepherd living off a flock. Okay? Fukushima is huge, folks. Now, Fukushima is on the terraformers list of things to do, but we're not going to be able to get to it for a while. For one thing, we can't do anything about it until there are no longer nation states willing to fight over it. I mean, imagine if we showed up today and we said, "Hey, we're gonna clean up Fukushima." The government person in charge would say, "Well, no, I think you're a bunch of terrorists and you just want to get your hands on all that nuclear material." Because that's how they think. They would not let us come in and fix it. So we have to wait until society, civilization has collapsed to the point where there's no government to defend Fukushima, and then we can go in there and clean it up. I know how to do it. It's not even particularly tricky, except for that stupid spent fuel pool where they... I'm not going to... I'll get angry if I go into that. Anyway, Fukushima can be cleaned up. Okay? I know how to do it. It wouldn't take 2 years. Maybe 3. Okay? But it can be fixed. Once the cores are pulled out of the bedrock and put in nuclear storage casks that will last, hopefully a few thousand years, then the northern hemisphere will start to heal. Until then, the amount of poison it is simply going to continue to increase. Right? Number 8, depleted uranium. This is one of the results of rule by psychopath. Right? When you have psychos in charge of your society, this is what they do. They refine uranium to where it has 2 kinds of goodies in it. It's got bomb-making uranium, which is U-238, and it's got nuclear reactor fuel, which is not quite as powerful as the bomb stuff, but that's U-235. They take out the U-238, the bomb material, and they call what's left depleted uranium, because they want you to think that this uranium was actually used in a reactor, and it made electricity, and it helped our world. And then it became, it got weak, it got old, and so we made ammunition out of it because it's denser than lead, and it'll go through a tank the long way. So why not use it? Well, several reasons. One, it is not depleted. It's fresh, brand spanking new reactor fuel. Okay. 2, when it hits that tank that it's going to go through the long way, one of the fun things it does on that impact is it vaporizes. Okay? So we have uranium vapor poofed into the air every time somebody pulls the trigger on his 30mm cannon on an A-10 Warthog in Iraq. Okay? Over and over and over again. The number of tons of depleted uranium that were spread over Iraq and Kosovo, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Afghanistan, a couple other countries, okay, is a war crime, folks. The people who write the war crimes laws, they saw this coming. They know that you can't do that. You damage, you totally destroy a piece of the world. Gargle Fukushima, not Fukushima, Fallujah. Gargle Fallujah, depleted uranium birth defects. And look at the god-awful pictures. Matter of fact, let's make a break here. Tim, when you edit this, I want you to cut right here and put in pictures of the Fallujah birth defects. Okay. All right. Watch this. We're going to show you some of the birth defects that are caused by using depleted uranium ammunition in a country where people live. Okay? Welcome back. Wasn't that horrific? Wipe your nose, dry your eyes. Those are real birth defects you just saw caused by real depleted uranium in Fallujah, Iraq. All right? Excuse me. Anybody? Welcome back. Dry your eyes, wipe your nose. Those were actual birth defects caused by depleted uranium fired by American and coalition forces in Iraq and around the town of Fallujah. Those birth defects are not only happening in Iraq, our own troops are experiencing them back here when they came home after Iraq and had babies of their own, because while they were in Iraq, they breathed in the depleted uranium, they took showers in water that was contaminated with it, they ate food and drank water that was contaminated with it, came home and had babies, and their babies looked just like those ones you just saw. Amazingly horrible birth defects, and at unheard of rates. Unheard of, simply unheard of. Okay, depleted uranium, folks, it cannot be cleaned up, and it's going to continue to affect the world for millions of years to come. Right now, I believe there are natural processes that will tone it down, so in a few hundred years, its effects will be unfindable. All right, but we can't clean it up. Only natural processes can do that. And I'll talk to you offline about what those processes are. It's boring and technical. Okay. Number 9, reason why civilization will not last the century. The bankers. These men and women are evil on its hind legs, walking like men. Now, we're preparing another video that's going to go up on the Sea Lions website. We probably put something about it here, but it relies a lot on biblical prophecy, so it's really not appropriate for a secular outfit like the Terraformers. But the bankers, these people are primarily one ethnic group, and no, it's not the Jews. Even though they say they're Jews, that's not who they really are. Okay, they've got problems as human beings. They have amazing defects, and yet they're very clever. They're very intellectual, and they're able to work together as one group. But what's going to happen is that because of their worldview, they really think that they're gods and we're insects, and that we just don't matter. Okay? And whether that's true or not doesn't matter. What matters is we don't like being treated like that, and we won't put up with it very long. They've had about 150 years. Well, when was Disraeli prime minister? 1740s, I think. Anyway, maybe 1840s. Anyway, they've only had a couple hundred years, and in that time, they have created a groundswell of absolute hatred. And by hatred, I mean the desire to see them die horribly and the willingness to carry it out. That's what these people have created in ordinary humans who otherwise would not dream of hurting another human. Most people don't want to hurt other people. But the bankers have created in ordinary people a sincere desire to kill them horribly and to wipe them off the earth. Even, not just kill the banker, but find his wife and kids and kill them too to make sure this doesn't happen again. Right? That is one of the reasons that civilization is going to come to an end, because they're going to continue doing the things that make people hate them. People are going to get organized and start to kill the bankers. I'm not going to do it. That's not my fight. I have other rats to roast. Okay? But people are going to get together and start hunting down the bankers. The bankers control armies, navies, air forces, and nuclear weapons. They're not going down without a fight. Sorry, but that's the way it is. And they also know that one of the most important ways for any oppressive empire to maintain control, which is what they have, it's a financial empire, but it's an empire, right, is keep tabs on the opposition and supply them with leaders who will always get them all whipped up too early, get them moving before they're ready, and then lead them to, and if they show real signs of success, make the decisions that will lead to their ultimate destruction. We saw this in Adolf Hitler, right? His job was to take the German people who were sick and tired of the bankers, okay, and whip them up to where they're ready to fight the bankers, okay, and what most of you may not realize is that the average German did not sign up to kill Jews or to fight Jews. The average German signed up to fight communism. Right? That is what they were so fanatical about. And it wasn't just Germans. The very last casualties in the Battle of Berlin, when the Russians took Berlin itself, the very last casualties were French and Danish volunteers who had joined the Waffen-SS to fight communism. They fought till they were out of ammo, and then they fixed bayonets. Right? Communism is bankers own everything. They'll tell you it's about what's good for the people, but it's not. Communism is the bankers own everything and everyone. Okay? That is what they put Hitler in place to get the Germans to fight before they were ready. He launched the war before everybody was ready. And his own generals told him, we're not going to be ready for a serious fight until 43. We just, we have to build the factories to build the stuff, to build the factories to be ready to produce that much stuff to fight on a serious fight. Okay? And they were right. It was 43 before German ammo production reached World War I levels. I mean, they were right. They weren't going to be ready for a war till 43, but Hitler started it early. And then when it looked like they were going to win anyway, because they were kicking everybody's butt, because they were motivated and trained, he started making the decisions that kept them from winning. And eventually, Germany looked like the surface of the moon when he got done with it. Because the bankers know when there's any kind of a serious threat out there, provide a leader. Provide the funding, provide the good advice and everything necessary to turn it into a real movement, but make it fire its bolt early. So it's not quite ready and it can be bloodily crushed, as an example to those who might follow. Right? They know this. They're going to do this. There's already a rule among any prepper group, and even here at the Sea Lions Foundation, we'll tell you in plain English, out loud. When somebody comes to a meeting and says we should blow up this or dynamite that or attack this or destroy that, that's your FBI informant. Greet him warmly. Do not let him know that you know he's an FBI informant, because then they might send somebody who's smarter who wouldn't say things like that. Keep the one you got, the one who's made it obvious, okay? And if you can, turn him into a sane human being who's actually helping work toward our goals. But I'm wandering far afield here. On security matters, we're not worried about infiltration, because to infiltrate us, to join the group, somebody has to help us work toward our goals. So if they want to infiltrate and find out all about us, I mean, that's okay. I got nothing to hide. Right? What we're doing is exactly what's published on our websites, okay? And having them here is going to help us move toward our goals. So, okay. But I'm wandering far afield. Number 10, reason why civilization is doomed by the end of the century: rule by psychopath. Oh, I said that one already. It counts twice. Rule by psychopath. Not only are Barack Obama and all of the guys in the Senate and the Congress and Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin and all those people just flatly psychos. And I don't mean they do stupid things or gonzo crazy things. I mean they're evil. Okay? Vladimir Putin right now, he's doing a lot of great things for Russia. Okay? Look at his pattern. What he's doing is great for Russian billionaires. All he's doing is favoring his billionaires over everybody else's billionaires. Whereas NATO and the U.S. are trying to get their billionaires in charge of the whole world. What Putin is doing is good for the Russian brand. It's good for Russian billionaires. It ain't good for Russian people. They're hurting under the economic sanctions. Okay, they're not hurting as bad as they would under another leader. He has taken some steps to take care of them. Okay, but even he did not become premier of Russia by collecting bottle caps. Right? He has a trail of dead people in his wake on his path to power, just like Barack Obama or George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or soon-to-be Hillary Clinton, or, I mean, pick a president, right? I don't know that Reagan had anybody killed, okay, but then I don't know that Reagan was actually president either. It's kind of like a giant Muppet with somebody else's hand in there. Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Folks, the tipping points have been passed in all these areas that I've just talked about. All of them, okay? There's no stepping back from the brink. There are already days on this planet when more people die than are born. Like it or don't, humanity is going to be sharply reduced in number by well over 80%, probably over 90% by the end of this century, folks. The end of this century is 85 years away. That's not a lot of time to kill 6.5 or 7 billion people. Okay? That's depopulation of epic proportions. And it's going to be bad. There have been archaeological excavations from when the Mayan Empire fell. And the Mayans were relatively good-natured. When you look at the different empires that arose in Central America, you think, man, these people hurt each other and their enemies for the sheer fun of it. And yes, that's true. They were into inflicting pain on others. And of all those groups, the Mayans were the most mellow of the bunch. Okay? When we find these graves of Mayans who died during after the collapse, right? What we find is on over 60% of the male skeletons, we find broken bones that healed before the wound that killed him. And 65%, they all died of wounds that are obvious on the skeleton, bashed in skull, right? Right. So what that means is the entire society endured 65% casualties. That is freaking unheard of. I mean, that is unheard of. World War II involved almost the whole world, all right? And only about 4% became casualty. That's killed or injured, either one, right? For a civilization to have 65% casualty, I'll tell you what that is. That's a scenario we're likely to have here, where the average stash of food, let's say the average stash of food is 10 days worth of food, right? That means every 10 days the population gets cut in half because the average stash is gone. That person goes looking for someone who still has food, and they fight over it, and one of them survives. So if the average food stash is 10 days, every 10 days the population gets cut in half. Period. Right? That's what we're looking at here. It's a very strong possibility. Mm-hmm. Any political body you think is worth fighting for or supporting or whatever will be gone well before the end of the century. It'll just be gone. There will be no United States of America. There will be the squabbling sub-regions of North America. Right? Any ethnic group you think you're part of will be divided and fighting itself too. Before the whites got here, the Indians fought each other, right? Because they didn't have anybody else. Yeah. Count on it. People pick sides, and ethnic groups especially, count on it. People pick sides, and they expect more from relatives than they do from outsiders, and they're more comfortable fighting with relatives than with outsiders, so it's easier to get started. And don't bother with any group that remains part of society, or part of civilization, I should say. Because there's an important difference. Your only hope is to either go completely independent or start a new civilization so that you have sane people to work with. One result of this population reduction is that the land will lie fallow for several hundred years, which might give it a chance to recover so that the next civilization will have a prayer of growing nutritious food in it. Even if that doesn't work, revitalizing the soil is one of the terraformers' projects. It will get done either way. Right? But whether the terraformers do it in 100 years or nature does it in 1,000, that's an open question. So, we have a future with an absolute shipload of death and destruction, even if it happens gradually, leading to a world that looks something like this. A few people and places will have tiny amounts of 20th century or 21st century technology. They'll rule over tiny, scattered fiefdoms, unable to maintain their equipment properly, and eventually grinding down to roughly 15th century technology like everybody else. Right? There will be less than 100 million people on the entire planet. Probably closer to 30 million. The largest proportion of these will be aboriginals, like the Abos of Australia, the Native Americans, the First Nations of Canada, some of the Tibetans and Mongolians, some of the Africans, right? Not many more. Those who are left will have almost all have varying degrees of radiation poisoning. It won't even take a nuclear war to do that. Fukushima has already killed the North Pacific and done for most of the Northern Hemisphere. And the nuclear industry in general, combined with our psychopathic leaders, will account for the rest. The Sane Society does nuclear research on a space station in orbit around another planet. Not this one. Okay? It cannot be cleaned up. Once it's on the surface, all you can do is wait for nature to rebury it. which will take centuries, volcanic eruptions, pole flips, things like that help bury any nuclear gunk that's on the surface. And folks, when I talk about cycles and patterns, I know what I'm talking about. Look up on the web Mohenjo-Daro, two words, Mohenjo, M-O-H-E-N-J-O, second word Daro, D-A-R-O, or Harappa, H-A-R-A-P-P-A. These are two towns right on the border between India and Pakistan, which were nuked 4,500 years ago. This story is in one of the ancient Indian writings. I think it's the Bhagavad Gita. It might be one of the other ones, but it's in one of the ancient writings where, he lays out exactly what happened. Okay? We can pull skeletons out of those towns today, 4,500 years later, that are just as radioactive as skeletons we pulled out of Hiroshima the week after we hit it. And there's all kinds of other forensic evidence. These towns were nuked. And you say, well, how could a primitive society like that build nukes? It wasn't primitive. Civilization has arisen on this planet before. It will happen again. Even according to the Bible. You want to go there? All right? God said to Adam and Eve, go out and refill the world. It's in every Bible. Your pastor ignores it. God told Adam and Eve, go out and refill the world. They were not first. They were merely the first of our version. Humanity 6.0 or whatever we are. Okay? Sorry, the energy I have to put out here is quite tiring. Almost everyone senses that a doom of this magnitude is approaching. It's just like the months before 9/11 when thousands of people around the globe had very disturbing dreams that foreshadowed the actual attack. Right? Thousands of people around the globe. And Google it, gargle it. Yeah, it's real. People are sensing impending doom, and they translate that feeling into terms they're familiar with. So, Book of Revelation, the return of the Mahdi, the collapse of the dollar, etc. Right? None of those has to be accurate for the premonition to be accurate. Bad stuff is about to happen on a global scale. And will continue until there are, bad things of biblical proportion are going to happen in the next 80 years. They're already happening. Okay? Fukushima happened 3 years ago, and it only took 3 years to almost completely kill the North Pacific. We have, since Fukushima melted down in 2011, there has not been a single killer whale born in the North Pacific which made it more than a year. And now the killer whales are so sick that the fetus will actually die inside the mother, and the mother will be unable to expel the rotting corpse from her body, and she dies. Folks, that was unheard of before Fukushima. It's killing our world. But bad things of biblical proportion, in fact predicted in the Bible but not in Revelation, are occurring already, and they will continue until there are almost no people left. Okay? That's the result of the next 80 years or so of civilization. I don't believe any other outcome is possible any longer. You need a path that leads to life. You need a path through all that destruction and out the other side for your young'uns. So, what is that path, you ask? Well, first, before we talk about what it is, let's talk about what it has to do. Right? A path to life has to make you mobile. Right? You're not mobile right now. You got a car, all right? But if anything happened that required you to move everything you care about to wherever, your car isn't going to help. Right? You have to be mobile. You have to be able to escape problems that are larger than you can solve. These have happened throughout human history, folks. Running away from your problems is nothing to be ashamed of when they really are that big. Okay? And when running away actually will solve them. If Yellowstone were to erupt and cover most of the continent with ash, the United States would be over in about a month. Really. I mean, just think about 6 inches of ash on everything. Okay? I'm not going to go into the whole doomsday scenario and explain why the U.S. would be over, but basically the U.S. would be over in about a month, and we'd all have to go live in South America or Europe or Africa or wherever. Right? It would be unlivable. There's no way we'd be able to dig out from under all that ash on a continental scale. Okay? That's not a problem you can solve. So run away from it. Move to Africa. Move to South America. Move to Europe. Right? Okay? Running away from our problems can work. In order to do that, you have to be mobile. Period. A path to life has to make you independent of civilization. See, nobody wants to stop participating in civilization. It's got some really cool parts. Right? What you need to do is not be dependent on it. Right? So that when you interact with civilization, when you go to that concert, okay, when you take part in that sporting event or, anything you want to do, you're visiting. Right? If civilization collapses, it won't take you with it because you're not part of it. And you're mobile. You can leave. Right? I mean, to be independent of civilization means all your basic needs. Food, shelter, transport, hot and cold fresh running water, shoes. Right? You have to be able to get those somewhere else. You don't have to get them somewhere else. You have to be able to get them somewhere else. So that a path to life makes you independent of civilization. A path to life has to involve friends who will fight for you and for whom you will fight. There has never been a time when this world was a safe place to live. Okay? That's not going to change in the foreseeable future. You have to have people who will fight for you, people who will secure justice for you. If you go join a scratch football team, you're just sandlot football, we're just playing on a Saturday afternoon, and somebody breaks the rules and, clotheslines me or whatever, and everybody else won't penalize him, say, hey, you're not allowed to do that, it's 5 yards or 10 yards or whatever the penalty is. If they won't fight for my right to not be clotheslined, I can't play ball with them. Okay? I just can't. Okay? You can't either. Civilization does not defend your rights anymore. There is no civilization anywhere no part of this civilization anywhere on this planet where your rights actually matter. You need a group of friends to whom your rights matter. Now that's only 3 main items, but that's a lot of stuff for one organization to provide. That's okay. Here at the Sea Lions Foundation, we think big. We provide the first 2, and as for friends who will fight for you, we put you among people who do what they say they'll do. So if you can win some of their friendship, then you'll have people who will fight for you. All right? The best we can do in that regard is put you in a pool of people who have shown the good character to take care of their own business and take care of it right. Okay? There's info about our program on several websites. They're all linked. Tim, are they going to be next on the video or under it on the page? Both? All right. Freedomfleet.net, neoviking.com, terraformers.neoviking.com, sealionsfoundation.com. You've got some reading to do. Pretty soon we'll get more videos up explaining the programs and benefits in more detail. But the point of this exercise is to inform you that you do not, your family line does not have to fall with your civilization. Your family line does not have to die out. You do not have to remain subject to the psychopaths who currently rule over you. Whether you do anything with this info, well, you claim to be a free person. Make your choices and experience the consequences. We can't choose for you, and we wouldn't if we could. Sea Lions Foundation, equipping the saints.